I absolutely think the world of this woman from back in the day when I met her years and years ago, starting off with the NFL Network now 13 years ago. And I love her work on CBS Sports and the CBS Sports Network. Amy Trask here on The Rich Eisen Show. What's up, Amy?
You know, Rich, it is a pleasure. It really is a privilege and a pleasure to join you. And those are not simple words or hyperbole. It is a privilege and pleasure to join you. But I will note that as I listen to the intro and your chitter-chatter, it's very clear I'm coming in off the bench as a sub for whomever was scheduled. And you know what? I am proud to do that because I am good in off the bench. And you know what? Just to hear you say tete-a-tete and détente, I'm ready to go.
And that was off the dome, too, Amy.
Pretty good.
That was...
we have known one another. I started with the Raiders in about 83, so I think I'm probably a lot older than you, but we have known each other about 100 years.
We have. I remember being at the first owners meeting and seeing Mr. Davis in his usual spot, abstaining the whole time as he normally did.
Until I put an end to that, Rich Eisen.
When did you put an end to that, the abstaining?
You know, I don't remember exactly when it was. It was as the litigation was sort of waning. And, originally when I joined the organization, the litigation was already pending and the animosity already existed. And the organization was abstaining for legal reasons. At some point, that morphed from legal reasons into sort of just a way of life. And, I said to Al, look, enough. We're voting yes or no. And the funny thing was we voted no more often than we voted yes. And all the owners that used to be so annoyed we'd abstain, I would look at them and say, bet you wish it was the olden days when we abstained, huh?
Yeah, when it was just 31 votes or even 29, 29 votes. So, okay, what do you think's happening between the Chargers and Bosa right now, Amy?
Look, I've seen the chitter-chatter on the Internet and the airwaves and things like that, and people want to either fault the Chargers or fault the player. And the truth is, as in most things in life, it's somewhere in between that. It's not mutually inconsistent to say that both the team and the player could be behaving more cooperatively and collaboratively. I don't believe it's all the team's fault. I don't believe it's all the player's fault. But it's a bad situation both for the team, which needs that player, and for the player who really is doing himself some harm by not joining the team. So, in my view, the team should give a little bit so that Bosa can save some face and say, aha, I'm coming in. You really don't want to grind, in a situation like this, there's no value in grinding a player into the ground so that when he does eventually come, it's a bad situation. And, what I would suggest is if the team wants to stick tight to its position on the offset language, which I understand, then perhaps it gives on the deferral of that final chunk of money and says, okay, we won't give it to you in March, we'll give it to you now. It's a compromise. It lets Bosa save face. Problem solved, better for everyone.
But the problem is, Amy, is that the Chargers went ahead and said, we have moved. And the reason why we now know that they have moved is they put out a press release. They publicly shamed the kid. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle. Why would they do something like that?
Well, Rich, I can see the smile on your face, and it would be a mocking little teasing smile. And perhaps it comes with an eye roll, because, of course, I worked for someone for almost 30 years who was not averse to taking things public that, let's just say, perhaps I thought should not be taken public.
Yes.
So I do realize the irony in what I'm about to say, which is I think it is very unfortunate that the team made the matter public. And again, before all your zillions and zillions of followers say, hey, we're calling, I don't want to use a bad word on your air, but, we're calling her on that. Al used to do that all the time. That's right. But that doesn't make it right. Here's what my guess is, that there's some pull and push and some push me, pull you within the Charger organization, because there's two issues. They're dealing with their normal business of football, and they're working hard to achieve a stadium solution in San Diego. And I really do believe that after the vote went in favor of Stan Kroenke and the Inglewood Project, and the Chargers went back to San Diego, that all of their efforts to get a new deal in San Diego done have been good faith, legitimate, real efforts. And I believe they do want to stay in San Diego. And my hunch is, just knowing the way things work in the NFL in general, I'm not suggesting I know this is what happened in the Charger organization, This is my educated conjecture. Somewhere there's someone saying, hey, for purposes of the work we're doing to try to achieve that stadium vote in November, we have to position the team well publicly on this issue. I think that was ill-advised, and I think it's backfired, but my guess is, and that's all it is that the motivation were the business issues, not the football issues.
Amy Trask joining me here on The Rich Eisen Show. That's why you're a perfect guest, not somebody coming off the bench, Amy, for something like this sort of thing, is because you are not only a veteran of ownership, but a veteran of a front office, but veteran of a front office and an ownership that had stadium issues, everything that's going on. So are you saying that the reason why they're holding firm on deferring some of this money is to look money conscious in the world of somebody saying you don't need my money to build a stadium? Is that why they're throwing firm on this?
I don't think that at all.
Okay.
I simply think that again, in my estimation, there may well have been someone who's handling stadium PR that pushed to release this player matter publicly. But
see.
That's my guess.
So then why? What's the issue? What's the issue about not giving him the money all in 2016? Like Ronnie Stanley's getting all his money in 20. I know it's not my money, but I mean, it's there, right? It's not like the Chargers don't have the cash, Amy.
Irrespective of different teams have different cash flow, cash needs. All of that aside, the amount that I understand is being deferred is within the scheme of things a rounding error. And, while I'm loath to refer to several $1 million as a rounding error, just on principle, that buys a lot of ice cream, Rich.
Yes.
I want to be judicious and not say, or I don't want to be cavalier and suggest a couple $1 million as a rounding error. But in the scheme of cash flow for a team, it's a de minimis amount. So I don't know why the Chargers are insistent on that deferral, but I do know that were it that would be a great way to compromise, let the player save some face so that he can say, all right, I'll compromise on the offset language. And by the way, I don't know if he or his agents will compromise on the offset language, but giving him something so that he can save some face is a good idea. And as to your point that, the press release soured the relationship,
yeah.
If that young man joins the team, the first time he sacks that quarterback, makes a big play, forces a turnover, recovers a turnover, the crowd is going to embrace him, and people have short memories.
Amy Trask joining me here on The Rich Eisen Show. But so from your, I guess, ground zero approach, or I guess experience with holdouts like Jamarcus Russell, who have hung out. I go, what?
Hey, thanks for the memory.
Well, I mean, but seriously though, I mean, those are the right. CBA was built maybe in a way that they didn't want the NFL. Nobody wanted another Jamarcus Russell happening anymore. The current CBA that's happening right now.
All teasing aside about my pleasant trip down memory lane, you're 100% right. The new collective bargaining agreement, and by new I mean the one adopted after that player matter.
That player matter.
How is that? For my next job, I'll be working in the diplomatic corps.
Look at you.
I think we all know that's not going to happen. But you're absolutely right. Jamarcus, that situation arose under the prior CBA, and as you have seen, and you are a student of the league, a master student of the league, that just doesn't really happen since the new CBA is in place.
So how does this? Well, I guess the reason why I brought that up is because Jamarcus basically you had face-to-faces with him, right, to get this thing settled. Is that how that happened?
I didn't personally, if that's what you're asking. There were people in the organization. Okay. Most of the faces-to-face, they were, of course, between the people that Al had negotiating contracts for the organization and Jamarcus's representatives. They weren't between our representatives and Jamarcus. They were between our representatives and Jamarcus representatives.
And so how often did you have to tell Al, no all caps press releases here on this one? Come on now. Let's keep this one.
That was just a real, frequent conversation in general. I talk about one of those press releases in the book that you so graciously mentioned at the outset of this conversation. There was a press release, I'm sure you remember it, in which it was, I'm sure, all caps, and the organization called someone in the media a name. And I grabbed that press release. I didn't see it till it was released. And I went into Al's office, and I was shaking. And all I could spit out was, we just issued this insane release, and we didn't even spell the word right.
Is the word mongerer?
And it wasn't even a word. And I mean, I just was shaking and looking at him like, if we're going to do something like this for love of something, could you at least use spell check?
I remember that well with the NFL Network, Amy. That was a big moment for us, I'll tell you that.
And we didn't even, I mean, and you know, you might suggest, you know, your anger was a bit misplaced if you were focusing on the spelling error. But the fact is, if you're going to issue a release,
right,
at least spell it right.
So then in the couple minutes I have left with you here, how does this really play out? How do the Chargers, after putting this release out, then come ahead and say, okay, we're going to negotiate against ourselves and give you more money after all this, and so you could save face? How is that even a possibility for a team to do that after sending out the press release?
I'll answer that in two ways.
Sure.
It's not really more money. It's just advancing the money.
Sure.
I'm simply saying they take the money that I think they were offering in March. And, you know, I'm not, you know, people use that expression in business all the time, sit across from one another and negotiate. In my estimation, the way deals are done are not when parties sit across from one another and negotiate, but when they sit side by side and collaborate. And you know what? What I think needs to be done, and it's a tough thing for a lot of people to do, be gracious, be the bigger party, pick up the phone and say, let's hit Control-Alt-Delete on this relationship. Let's unplug the computer, plug it back in, reboot it, Control-Alt-Delete it. And you know what? If this will make things better, we'll advance that few $1 million that we had deferred. You know, you have to swallow deeply sometimes and just, you know, swallow your pride, swallow your you know, dander, whatever it is, and just say, come on, it's better for us, it's better for you. Control-Alt-Delete. Let's do this together. Okay.
And lastly, what do you make of the report that the Raiders have gotten some trademarks on the name Las Vegas Raiders? What do you think about that?
I think it's smart. If there's any likelihood that the deal gets done, and I do believe there is a likelihood, you know, it may not happen, but it certainly is well outside, you know, it is, I was going to use about a triple negative. It is within the realm of possible that a deal gets done, and you're smart then to own those intellectual property rights, because if you don't, someone's going to go in and squat on them and hold them hostage for ransom if you ever need them. So what they're doing is smart, irrespective of what happens. It's very, very cheap to secure those rights. Okay.
When I buy my copy of You Negotiate Like a Girl, Reflections on a Career in the National Football League, can I get it autographed?
Well, let me tell you this, Rich. When I see you at one of our favorite restaurants, which we shall not name,
okay, yes,
I will bring you one.
I don't want one. I'm buying, Amy. I buy people's books. I buy friends' books. I don't want them for free.
Wow.
That's the way it works.
Honored.
No, I buy the books.
Well,
I don't want a copy from you. I will hand you one, and I would like you to sign it.
I will see you at the restaurant.
Well, that was my sly way of inviting you in studio. I got to see you in person here.
Oh, I get it. No food involved. I'll cut in studio.
There is an I in Rich and Eisen.
It would be absolutely my privilege.
Thanks for calling in. You're the best. Thanks, you.
Rich.
You got it. That's Amy Trask.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.